Convicted murderer and rapist Paul Bernardo applies for day parole. He is currently serving a life sentence for killing 2 teenage girls. He was designated a dangerous offender after he admitted to raping 14 other women. Ted Danson is the lawyer for the families of Bernardo's murder victims, Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French. He has been in touch with the families after learning of the killer's application. Ted Danson joins me now from Toronto. Tim, what was your reaction when you heard that Paul Bernardo is asking for day parole?
Well, at first you're kind of shocked just by the pure nerve of this individual to think that he's entitled to any kind of release, let alone early release. But obviously, we knew this day would come. Legally, he's entitled to apply for parole. It was very, very difficult for the families, very, very upsetting, as one would expect. And so right now, I've just asked them to process it, to digest it, decompress a little bit because it's so upsetting. And then, once they've taken the time necessary to digest this, then we'll talk about what's next in terms of victim impact statements and participating in the actual parole hearing itself.
Here's the confusing part. He was declared a dangerous offender, and a lot of people took that to mean that you throw away the key, that he has no opportunity to come out of prison.
Well, actually not. Yeah, that's actually incorrect. It is true that a dangerous offender designation is an indeterminate sentence. However, for it to be constitutionally valid, the Supreme Court of Canada has made it clear, and the law is very clear, that after 7 years, you're entitled to a review, and then you're entitled to a review every 2 years to deal with that particular designation. However, where Paul Bernardo is different is that he's also been convicted for 2 counts of first-degree murder for which he's received life sentences, for which you're not entitled to parole for 25 years. However, for day parole, you're entitled to apply 3 years prior to the 25 years, and the timeline is calculated not from conviction but from his arrest and incarceration, which is 22 years. So that's why he's eligible to apply now. Having said that, I've made it very clear to the authorities on behalf of my clients that the parole board is going to have to deal with his dangerous offender designation first, which is a much higher threshold in my view, before you even get to the regular statutory application for day parole. However, which way you cut it, in my view, knowing all the facts and the law as I understand it, I'm of the strong view that the chances of Paul Bernardo getting any kind of release at any time in his life is 0.
What will he have to, Tim, can I just interrupt there? What will he have to prove in order to get day parole?
Well, he's going to have to establish that he's no longer a risk to public safety. And so here, when you have a combination of a dangerous offender designation and conviction for first-degree murder, for someone who is at the highest end of sexual sadism and psychopathy, that's why I'm of the strong view that his chances of getting any kind of release is 0. His case management team, that is the people who are managing his so-called rehabilitation in the system, in prison, they would have to come forward with a plan, and I would be shocked if any case management team would think that Paul Bernardo even comes close to the threshold for being considered for any kind of release. You would then have to have medical evidence, and again, I would be shocked if any reputable doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist would come forward and say that Paul Bernardo happens to be the first psychopath in history to be rehabilitated and not represent that significant threat to public safety. And when you look at the definition of a dangerous offender, in terms of the repetitive behavior, in this case, repetitive sadistic and violent, brutally violent behavior, in addition to the murders, he's just not going to be released. Having said that, we take nothing for granted.
Well, I just wanted to break this down because, as I understand it, the dangerous offender status is related to other crimes, but he's applying for the day parole on the murders of Leslie Mahaffy and Kristen French, right? In particular, those 2 crimes.
Well, that's an interesting question because that's one of the questions that I've put to the authorities recently. Is Paul Bernardo simply applying for day parole in the regular way, or is he also applying to be relieved from the consequences of the dangerous offender designation? So I'm simply taking the position that if he thinks he's only applying for day parole, I say no, he has to first deal with the dangerous offender designation. And you're quite correct. The dangerous offender designation applies to four other offenses that he was convicted of, which is the kidnapping and aggravated sexual assault of Kristen French and Debbie Mahaffy. But remember, it was agreed that rather than prosecute Paul Bernardo for the 14 or 15 Scarborough rape charges and the rape of Jane Doe, those victims were able to read their victim impact statements at the time of the dangerous offender application. So Justice Assange heard all of that evidence. So when we're dealing with the dangerous offender designation, we're talking about 18 victims, and then, of course, the murders.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Ted Danson, lawyer for the French and Mahaffy families, thank you for joining me in Toronto.
Thank you very much.